Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the afternoon show. Mm, These lines can't be serious. We've been hoping that they would stick around. They're coming back. They've been here at the waterhole for the last 20 minutes. But now, as we start the show, something seems to be moving them off a bit. I wonder if an elephant is arriving. That seems to be quite usual. A lot of animals disappear as the show starts, but that's okay. We just look at these beautiful predators. Full bellies. They've already had a drink. Yeah, there we go. There's the culprit. He's not happy that they get the center stage. How wonderful to see these two beautiful big animals of the African bush. And it's quite clear who is the real king of the jungle. Wonder where the fifth line has disappeared to. We're going to spend a bit of time here at the Tambie cam. We don't often get to see lions coming down during the day or during the show, so it's an extra privilege. See if we can get the camera to pan out a bit. I want to see where that elephant. There's the fifth line. I also wanted to see where the fifth one has got to. So they haven't gone too far, but it's quite interesting. The reaction in the beginning was they tried to move off to the right and then turned around to the left. So they're definitely perturbed by the elephant bull's arrival. Also probably had a lot to do with the way he arrived. He came down quite quickly with very intent motion towards the waterhole. I don't think he was planning on chasing the lions. I'm not so sure that the elephant really cares about the lions at this point. Sometimes if lions, try and play a game with elephants, or if there were some young ones, you can see lions getting quite aggro. Just have a look at that body language of that lioness in the foreground. She dropped her dropped her head and raised her shoulders there just a bit, almost in a stalking fashion. I'm not sure if more elephants are coming out. Let's keep watching. This is an incredible scene here. In fact, a lot of the things we see, most of the things we see on these cameras are truly incredible. I spend a lot of my time in various parts of the African bush. And when I can't be there in person, this is a wonderful opportunity to keep looking into the window of a world I love so much, and I'm sure those of you watching love as well. Remember, if you do have any questions, please send them my way. Always nice to engage with you, the viewer. Some of you on Facebook, others on YouTube, some of you on the Africam website. And just a reminder while we're talking about that, the show is going to go on for an hour. The first half an hour will be open to everybody, and the second half will be for those on Africam Premium. We'll go through a couple of highlight videos there and keep watching what's going on the cameras. And it's quite interesting to note, we'll go to some of the other cams a bit later, but it is quite interesting to note that everywhere across the country, the northern part of the country seems to be overcast, as it is here in Tambie, which is great, allowing the lions to sit out in the open. But there has been lots of rainfall in many of the other areas, which, as we've seen, does disperse the wildlife. So I'd like to spend a bit of time here and just watch see what comes along. So there's 2 lionesses in the foreground. There's 2 young males on the right. They are most likely from the same litter. It's quite possible that they're not. The one at the back on the right looks a little bit bigger, slightly more developed mane than the one on the left. I'd like to get a closer view. I'm not sure which one of these adult lionesses is the mother, but I think those 3 at the back are siblings. The lioness, the back left, and 2 young males on the right. Either way, those 2 males are beautiful specimens. They've got, especially the one at the back on the right, his mane's developing quite nicely. What's quite interesting to note is his mane is predominantly developing under his throat. Sometimes they get a decent mohican and some hair growth on the back of their neck. But that fellow seems to be getting a good covering on his throat, which is great. Let that get nice and thick, because that's when his turn comes to fight. That's what will protect his throat. There's a beautiful lioness. Oh, there she goes, coming from behind the palm. Let's see if she picks a little play fight with her brothers. Although I suspect with such full bellies, they won't be doing too much unnecessary moving. I'm not sure what they killed or when they killed it. But I did see the other day, I think 2 or 3 days ago, this pride of lions having a good go at giraffe. Now we've seen them over the last little while, maybe a month or 2. Just have a look at her having a good smell of that palm. Picked up a scent of somebody. Maybe it's one of their own pride members or a big male that might have moved through the area. But yeah, we've seen those 3 in particular, those youngsters playing around chasing big giraffe. But just the other day, they all got stuck, and even the lionesses. So I wonder one day we might see some big action in this open area around the waterhole. Lions tend to work out how to hunt specific prey species in specific areas. And once they work out what's happening, if they get good at hunting giraffe, it is a bit of a trick, but if they can crack the code, it's obviously a really good meal. In fact, they've all got very full stomachs. I'm thinking maybe they caught one. If they caught an Inyalo or an Impala, you'd maybe see the males having big stomachs and the others looking a little scrawny, like they got left out. But in this case, it looks to me like their stomachs are all really bulging. Anyway, that's a story we'll have to keep an eye on. That elephant bull has chosen to spend time at the far corner of the waterhole. Difficult to say whether it's because of the lions or not, but maybe there's a bit of a thought in the background of his idea to go to that side. Let's see if he comes back this way. The lions are certainly having a good look in that direction. That female who just yawned every now and then had a bit of a twitch in her tail. Maybe she's expecting that bull to come back. Let's see what happens. You see the lioness at the back as well. She's really looking quite intently just to the right of the camera. So is that male in the middle. I'm sure the camera will pan out at some point to get a better idea to what's going on. There's a question from Kate Robinson about the radio collars. I haven't spoken about them yet in this particular show. But yeah, those collars are quite interesting. You'll often find them on research animals. So if someone's doing research on lions, or we've seen them quite a bit on elephant or any other animal for that matter. That's what they're looking at. There's an Inyala bull. Oh dear, I wouldn't go so close. Kate, I'm going to get back to your question in just a moment. Let's have a slow watch at this animal behavior. Love watching body language. So it's quite interesting. The Nyala is approaching what looks to be clear danger as far as we're concerned. But the fact that those lions are keeping dead still, they're blending right in. Antelope don't have great 3D vision. They've got their eyes on the side of the head, so great peripheral vision. Oh, something disturbed those lions at the back. Let's see what the Nyala does. Let's listen out for any alarm calls. There you go. There was an alarm call of that Nyala. Wow, so interesting. Again, to be on a fly on the wall in this ancient relationship between predator and prey is truly amazing. That Inyala is showing a classic example of initial behavior being prey. It's coming to have a clear look. It doesn't want to panic and run in case it runs into more. I suspect the wind is blowing the scent of the lions away. So it needs to rely on its sense of sight. So it needs to come in closer. It knows there's danger. So it gives that alarm call. Sounds like a dog's bark or a gunshot. But that Inyala is telling those predators that their presence is known and that their element of surprise is gone. And therefore their chance, if they were to try and catch it, wouldn't be so good at all. Lucky for that Inyala, those lions' bellies are really full. And your comment there, Kate, they want dessert. It's not unlikely, but I don't even think ice cream would fit in that gap. You see that Inyala is not sure which way to go. I suspect the wind or the fact that it can't utilize its sense of smell, making it hard to make a decision which way to go. But I think it made the right call. I have seen on a number of occasions, but once there was a game path that led down to a waterhole, and on that game path was a pride of lions that had killed a zebra, a kudu, and a warthog, all in the same or a similar time frame. And what I think kept happening was animals were coming down the game trail at night with bad wind, and the lions had great opportunity. So when there's good opportunities, predators will often take it and have multiple kills in one spot, never being able to finish all the meat. But there is a level of instinct that they have to hunt. But in this case, it's open ground, their stomachs are full, the opportunity is not so great, so they're happy to just relax until next time. Really interesting behavior. Just love it. Okay, so coming back to your question on the collars, yes, it's typically used for two things. One is for research. Obviously, someone who has a limited amount of time wants to try and find the animals that it's studying, and so that's the easiest way. But in a place like Tambie, and indeed many wild areas these days, unfortunately, the encroachment of humans pushes in onto these protected areas, and the animals do get out. And what's really important from a conservation point of view, especially for lions and elephants, that's why we see them on those two animals in particular, is they're quite likely to move out into farming zones or at least human inhabitant areas. And as soon as they go out there, the folks that are managing their movement, they can tell that they're out and they try and get them back as quickly as possible, essentially trying to minimize the animal-human conflict, which is one of the main reasons why there are actually so few wild animals left and wild spaces. So whenever you see a collar on these animals, it's not great from a photographic perspective, but it is definitely a very important and functional way to keep them alive. There's also some more questions. I don't know if you have any about the collars, but maybe I can answer some of them. So those collars are relatively speaking light. At first, when you first put a collar on the animal, you put it on pretty loosely, obviously not loose enough that it can pull it off. And it usually takes about a week or so before the animal stops trying to shake it off and actually just gets on with it as though it's not there. As you can see, these lions don't seem to be too bothered. It doesn't restrict their breathing. It doesn't restrict their ability to hunt. So as far as the sort of negatives go, it is a really good practice. There are some interesting concepts of internal senders. They're just not as good in terms of working at long distances. These collars are most likely GPS signal driven, so someone can be sitting anywhere really and pick up the movement, which is really important as they start to, in fact, things like elephants, as they start to move towards boundaries, they try and get there before it gets out. So quite an important conservation effort there. There's another question here from Grometi asking how many lions actually live in Tambie Elephant Park. I'm not actually sure, but I'll get back to you on that one because it's a good question. Let me see if we can find out either on this show or I'll get back to you tomorrow morning. But I suspect this pride here is the pride we typically see in this area. Every now and then some males come through. but it would be a good idea to get an understanding of the number of lions in Tambie. Coming down for another drink. Looking in that direction behind that acacia again. Let's see what else is coming down. Maybe some more elephants. Behaving in a similar way. Not too sure of the direction to go in. So affectionate, a pride of lions. Just look at that. Mommy's boys. Really important, that rubbing up on each other and playing with each other. Really important for the connection within a pride. It also sometimes it seems like it gives each other confidence. Often if they've missed a hunt, if they've had a hunt hunting buffalo or something large and it hasn't quite worked out, when they all gather after that, you see there's an extra amount of that sort of behavior right there. They're kind of consoling each other and encouraging each other. The next time will be better. I'm not sure if any of you have any cats at home, but their behavior is much the same. Wow, what a treat this afternoon. Grumeti have done a bit of double checking on that number, and it's quite interesting. There's some information that their carrying capacity is 20. Generally, carrying capacity gets quite in-depth and scientific, but essentially it's got to do with the amount of food is available for the individual predator. At the moment, though, they've got a higher number of 35, so they're 15 over their carrying capacity, and that has a lot to do with the fact that there are lots of Inyala. And we've got a photograph that I'll show you later to illustrate that, and those that watch the cameras on a regular basis. There are lots of Inyala, lots of warthog. It's a very tropical environment, so there's good food for the prey. So they can balance that carrying capacity. But I suspect the biggest problem, and as time goes by, they'll need to monitor that, depending on how much the human population grows. around the reserve. At the moment, there seems to be a great balance. We work quite closely with Tambie and their conservation efforts, and it's been successful for a very long time. But there's your answer. At the moment, 35 lions. So we've got another 30 to see. Another question here. Good question, Kate. Those young lions, they sub-adults. I'd probably put them around maybe 20 months. 24 months is a sexually mature, essentially an adult. So I don't think they're quite there yet, but somewhere around 20 to 24 months. The second part of your question is, do they have designated names? I'm not sure. I personally just keep them as lions. Usually if animals are being researched, though, it's not a bad idea to have a name, obviously, to work out different animals. But then again, a lot of people love giving them names as we see them fairly often. Maybe you'll be the one to name them. Wow. So that was a wonderful way to start the show. We've almost come to the end of the first half of the show. And it is just quite amazing that we've often come across to the cameras and we've seen this image right now of not much happening. And one often thinks, or I often think, I wonder if the lions are around. Oh, there's a waterbuck. But it is quite interesting to see that there are no nyalas, that there's no impalas. This waterbuck's just arrived, but he is having or she is having a good look around. The dynamic that we don't see, whether it's the wind or the rain or the heat. And just to answer your question, it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon. They're panting because they've got full stomachs, but it is also pretty warm. It's the middle of summer, and this area, Tambie, is quite tropical. It's humid. So that's what's causing that panting, or at least adding to it. But yeah, the elements and the things that we can't see from the camera, something to always bear in mind when there's nothing happening for that particular moment. Because there's a big puzzle going on out there, and every piece plays a role, as we've just seen between the nyala and the lions, the elephant bull. That waterbuck didn't stick around. Great instinct for survival. Folks, we're just going to go through some photographs, some of the snapshots before we end the first half of the show. I'll go through the videos and highlight videos in the second half of the show. But as the lions have moved on, we're just talking about humans and the wildlife. There's a wonderful picture taken over the last weekend by Norm at Naledi. We happened to be there in person, and these lions had just killed an impala. And it's great to see the lodges have got some guests back in them, which is actually really important for the cycle of conservation. Makes the land worthwhile having for wildlife. And indeed, a picture of nature, of a nature observer. That's the caption there, Norm. That's one of the trackers that if you do go to these lodges, there's incredibly skilled Shangaan people on the front of the vehicle that can track down almost anything. So those were 2 lines of 7, if I remember correctly. There's actually a pride of 24 lines in the Naledi. It's a much bigger area, So talking about line numbers, it's good to keep an eye out there. And there's one more photograph before we end the show, the first half of the show. And this is another human being just talking about or picking up on the concept of animals and human and the conflict that gets created. The caption is a ranger, I hope. Greg, this is a photograph you took or a snapshot at the same pan, by the way, where the lines were. This was actually the day before. Perfect timing on her behalf. That's a lady by the name of Letty, and she is part of the very important anti-poaching unit that moves through that area. It's an all-female anti-poaching unit called the Black Mambas. And those of you that are on Africam Premium, this is one of the projects we support coming from the premium side of things. And they've been incredibly successful. They're an unarmed group of ladies that move through the bush on foot, reporting any sign of poaching or poachers, breaks and fences, snares. And so far, they've had great success rates, both with catching poachers, but also having no conflict. The concept of being unarmed is working so far. So if anyone is interested in that concept, have a look at Black Mambas anti-poaching unit. A really cool story. That's what we were actually doing there over the weekend. We were spending time with the Black Mambas looking at various operational procedures. But it's great to see a photograph of her. Wow, folks, for those of you that have joined us on Facebook and YouTube, thanks so much for your time. It was great spending this half an hour with you. If you'd like to jump across and carry on watching the rest of the show, go across to Africam and sign up on the premium subscription. For those of you already there, we're going to carry on. Let's have a little tour, see what else is on the cams. I've also got some videos to share with you that were taken over the last couple of days. For those of you leaving us, we'll catch up with you tomorrow morning for the morning show and see what else comes our way. So we've switched across to Olifant's River Cam. And there's some very relaxed kudu females. Quite a different ambience after watching the lines and the interaction, but this is a beautiful calm afternoon. I think they've had some rain yesterday and today. You can see how thick the bush is, but the kudus don't mind that at all. They've got nice big ears, can listen. To anything that might be there. Wow, look how full the river is. Let's see if the camera pans across there again. I want to get a good look at how full the river is. Been a lot of rain lately. So those kudus have moved off into the thicket. It sounds like Swanson's spurfowl giving us a shout. Wonderful afternoon calls of all the spurfowls and franklins. Wow, that river has risen a lot. in the last 2 days. Let's keep panning across and see who else is on the banks. Be nice for the hippos. Sometimes the river is quite shallow. Hippos need nice deep water to stay covered by the water, not too deep. Some of you might remember the concept that hippos don't swim. They sink to the bottom, and when they move, they run on the riverbed. Beautiful call of the Birchel's cuckoo. Just so lush, beautiful environment. That high-pitched tweeting that we've often heard and I've often battled to identify. I actually got a glimpse of what it was actually at that river cam itself. It is a pied wagtail, just not doing its full call. So that was my original thought, but it's not always clear. And you've got to be quite careful with birds. Lots to learn. It almost seems like the green has stepped it up a notch in shade. It looks cleaner, it looks new. Maybe just washed off by the rain. Everything does look really lush. Okay, doesn't look like anybody's home on the banks of the Olifants. We're gonna cross over to Rosie's pan, actually not too far away from the river at all. And let's see if there's anything around here. We're just gonna have a slow pan around just in case. Beautiful afternoon bird calls. It looks like that camera is just taking a bit of strain there. That's okay. We might come back a little later. We're here at Tinkora Pan, and there's a wonderful view of a wildebeest and an impala, as well as the foot structure of the lodge. Let's see if they move across. Maybe the camera will pan out a bit, see what else is out there. But it is a really good view of this blue wildebeest, or the brindled gnu. You can see the brindles going all the way down the neck. through the shoulders and fading off on the flanks. That's a big territorial bull. He's in perfect condition. We often see one at Tau Cam. The concept's the same. He's trying to hold on to this prime territory of good feeding and water area. That's what will attract the herds. Just want to wait and see if the camera pans out a little here. Just want to get a better idea of anything going on in the general vicinity of the waterhole. Just keep going with the pan around here. Let's just see. As you all know by now, you never know what might pop out the woodworks. I'm not sure if anyone was watching the cams. I think it was the beginning of the weekend or maybe Friday, Thursday, where a leopard came across here at Nkoropan, and I think it was playing with the Egyptian goose, but it did stalk and try and chase him out, which it did successfully. I'll dig out the video for tomorrow's morning show, but that was a great little clip of the leopard that moved through the area not too long ago. It's always good to look back into some of the snapshots, the highlight videos. It truly is amazing what comes through to these waterholes. Talking about unusual predators coming through to waterholes, I've got a video clip I'd like to share with you for today. And this is a great bit of footage taken at Naledi of an African wildcat. Some of you might have actually seen this, but just look at the shape of this little predator. It's quite unusual. They've got long legs, slender body, and a true African wildcat has black feet and a black tip on the end of its tail, which you don't often get to see. But when this cat steps out, it has all of those aspects of a true wildcat. There's a big concept out there that actually a 100% purebred African wildcat doesn't really exist anymore, or at least in very low numbers, because they would have inbred with a domestic cat. And over the years, diluted the gene pool, but this to me looks about as close to a purebred African wildcat. Long, extra long legs, slender body, and those black feet, the black tip on the end. Look how black those feet are. I'm not so sure I've seen one. Maybe it's because you don't often get such long views of them, but this is an incredible little predator. Unbelievable eyesight. Just look at that reflection. That's the reflective tapetum. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but it's essentially a reflective layer at the back of the eye that sends light back into the eye, allowing them to pick up a lot more light. Big ears, look at the size of those ears. Purpose bred, really functional little predator. Just like to watch. You don't often get to see such a clear view. You see the black pads? That's perfect. Looks like he's heard something, she's heard something and wanting to sneak off. So they'll hunt all sorts of things, from small birds in the thickets, raiding birds' nests, little rodents. But in this case, I'm not sure what chased it off there. Doesn't really show us in the video clip, but really special to see. So we're going to go to another clip that was taken at the same waterhole, and that's of a white-backed vulture. We're going to get ourselves there slowly but surely. Oh, we can come back to it a little later. Seems we have some wonderful technical difficulties here. There we go. Back into the bush. We're back at Tinkora here. I just want to see if we can get the vulture on the screen. We are getting somewhere. There we go. So this was a wonderful video. Again, you don't often get to see them so close up. This is a white-backed vulture and is also a rare and endangered bird, funny enough. If you go to the bush, or it is the most plentiful of all the vultures, but all vultures are endangered, and unfortunately, because they can fly out of protected areas, they go into farmlands, and a practice for farmers to try and get rid of vermin is to poison carcasses in order to get rid of things like jackals or other animals like that. The vultures get caught up in that and can get wiped out in big numbers. Not too long ago, we saw some vultures with radio collars or radio, I don't know, call them backpacks strapped to them, not a collar, but essentially tracking their movement. And what's really quite nice is that generally up to 85% of vultures' movement in an area is all concentrated in protected national parks or private reserves, which is a great concept. Good to know. I just thought this is such a nice picture of a relatively ugly bird. I'm sure there's some vulture lovers out there. They have a very important role to play, but they're not quite as pretty as some of the other birds out there, but they don't seem to mind. They carry it well. It was a kingfisher that just dived in there for a snack. So there's one more video I'd like to go to, and that is the other end of the scale of beauty. It's a bit of a tough contest, really. This is a lilac-breasted roller, front and center. You don't get a much better view of its colors than that. Just a gorgeous bird. I thought it would be nice to have a look at that. A lilac-breasted roller. Okay, we're going to go back to some of the live cameras. Let's see if there's anything happening at Tau. Yes, a wonderful green palette. Look at that. Beautiful impala males in the foreground. There's a waterbuck on the back right. 2 of them, 3 of them, 4 of them. Nobody in a rush. Absolutely no panic. Just a beautiful, relaxed scene. There's no wind. Looks to me like they've also had some recent rain. We must remember these days when we get to June or July, the middle of our winter, when things are really brown and dry, and one can feel the desperation almost. But right now, it's definitely a time of plenty. It looks like most of these impalas are males, if not all of them. We've often seen these bachelor herds, these males that stick around together, good safety in numbers. All seem to get on just fine right now. Just sitting back enjoying the view. Just have a pan around before we move on to the next camera. Okay, so no sign of anything else. I'd like to just show you one snapshot that was taken by Julie B here at Tau. And there's a couple of things here. The redness of these elephants is quite striking. If you had to take a bucket of soap and water and wash them, they would still be gray. But that's the ochre that they have found in the soils at another waterhole, because it doesn't look like we have red ochre clay here at Tau Pan. But there must be an area close by. That soil has a high iron content in it, and they look like they've covered themselves from head to toe, quite literally, in that mud. And then the question here is, what's going on here? I had a look at the string of shots taken, and these are 2 bulls just having a little sparring match. Nothing too serious, but they're having a little play fight. And at this age, so the one on the left, I would say, is maybe approaching 20-ish. The one on the right, possibly between 25 and 30, so it looks a bit bigger, a little bit older. But at the moment, life's not too serious. Once they reach 34 years of age, they'll start to come into heat or must. It's essentially big bursts of testosterone that they'll get. And that's when these fights can become quite serious. And all they're doing is fighting for breeding rights over females. But I just thought the contrast of this graph was great. Okay, I'd like to go back to Tambie just to recap and see if there's any further development from where we saw the lions earlier. And it looks like the waterbuck have come down as well as some Nyala. The waterbuck were looking with a fair amount of interest on the left where the lions moved off. Now it's difficult to say how far the lions would have moved off and where they've gone. But I suspect their kill's not too far away from the waterhole. It really is the perfect place to lay ambush. I've spent a fair amount of time in this area, and one of the places I worked at, we used to just go and sit at a waterhole like this in the dry months. And if the lions were there, we would have probably an 8 out of 10 chance of actually seeing some predator action. So I suspect they're just off in the woodland on the edge, like we saw earlier. They're not too bothered. This is the lions I'm talking about. They're not too bothered to try and hunt again, unless, of course, one of these animals were completely unsuspecting and strolled right up to them, which is also not impossible when there are big numbers of antelope. Like this one snapshot that was taken by Tommy not too long ago. And the caption's great. Oh my, love this. It truly is quite incredible to see so many animals, but you can also get an idea of the volumes I'm talking about. And we spoke earlier about carrying capacities in an area. Now, these Inyalas definitely help with regards to predator numbers in general, but it is a wonderful photograph and a great illustration of an animal that you don't actually get to see in many other areas. The Inyala is quite widespread, but typically quite shy, often found on thick riverbanks, and also gets outcompeted in many areas by kudu and bushbuck. But this northeastern part of the country where Tambie is seems to be a very good environment for them. Folks, we come to the end of that hour. It is quite incredible how fast the time goes. But I just want to take this opportunity to thank all of you for taking these wonderful snapshots. Whenever I go through them to pick, I guess, a handful out of what one has there, to pick them is always very tricky. There's always one shot seems to be better than the other. And lots to choose from, but I do enjoy picking out all of them as well as the videos. But the scenic shots and these photographs with contrasts of color are definitely my favorite. So I'd like to end the show on this one taken by Toffee Tree. I have to ask the question to some of you, where do these names come from? I wonder what the history is. But your caption there, Toffee Tree, is perfect. Lovely colors. Lovely colors indeed. Folks, thank you so much for joining me again this afternoon. It is always a wonderful part of the day to sit in front of the cameras and just see what comes our way. Sometimes there's lots of activity, other times there's not so much. You have to spend more time looking. Either way, it is a wonderful window into a wild world out there. I look forward to catching up with you tomorrow morning on the morning show. And as always, I can only encourage you to keep watching the cameras, keep taking the snapshots, and we'll go through them on the shows. Guys, have a great day further. We'll catch up with you tomorrow.